of irreplaceable items from his archive which were stolen. Now these are the words of Kamau, which he would have sent. He would have listed works that were missing, things like recordings with Wilson Harris or Rex Nettleford file. There are things that can never be replaced, that no longer exist. And in the midst of this, making this list, his frustration can be heard. What this experience, which I may well not survive, is teaching me is that racism, because that's what it is, even though you will turn it round, say it isn't so, accuse me of thin-skinned ignorance or mistaken identity, in other words, that I must take what I'm getting and shut up. Racism comes in many guises and disguises, and it's like a snake coiled round and round the so-called culture of the West. And I say so-called because any entity which is corrupt in its instincts and its actions, out of these instincts cannot be graced with the good name of culture. A word indeed coiled and cultivated in the West as a paradigm superior to other social life forms. And I am saying this with some elation also, because for the first time at last, I am faced with the reality of what we have learned and teach in our holy books, which now I clearly see as nothing more than forms of clover propaganda, designed to speak with the air of the serpent, designed to trick and falsify, designed to allow you to grasp the hand of the sword and its scimitar, believing this steel to be points of honor and edges of a welcome ceremonial that is so easy to learn and teach and know very little about the world, so easy to develop sleeves of hypocrisy and blandishment, to avert the eyes from the crisis when it is not us involved in the mail screen. But with this submission to Holocaust here in this apartment for the last 2 years, and clearly far longer than that, but when, without eyes of understanding, I can tell you that we are sitting in a nest of racism. A word, see what I mean, that you're not supposed to use. But if it's not that, what's Louis Ma and Sean Bell and Rodney in California, who still wanted to get along, and Mary Lou Hamer, and what happened to Michael Jackson and Jack Johnson, and to all those Haitians turned back from these shores? I mean, it leads to other things too, to other forms of corruption, through its various forms of violence and sadism, and the laddering of egocentrism and superiority. All this so easily, so quickly, becomes slavery all over again, and imperialism all over again. Or rather, continues these oppressions, these hells, these Nagasakis. So that my being here, a black ass from the Caribbean, writing my poetry, winning a few prizes, which don't go anywhere, racism again, teaching a very successful and mind-centering course for some 15 years now, possessing, as a result of centuries of litigation in the desert, where we should have had nothing, should have eaten stone, but I am one lucky to collect bread, lucky to break it into manna, happy to serve the few fish of ashes into something we could share, transformed into simple feast. Because of these things, not submitting to the status quo, continue myself, reaching amazingly, despite all that desert, perhaps because of it, towards radiance, and sharing this vision, and teaching it too, as again, sharing in the classroom, so that there is, in my 77th year, now this is obviously written some years ago, a heritage, the miracle of a heritage, something soon to pass on into harvest, that the people I come from would have something from this one person, as from others too. We all in this smalls together, gathering. That this would have to become too much for the racists. That's how I see this disrespect, this violent anger that I should have this This books and papers and tapes and all these manuscripts and drafts towards long poems, when really I should be hanged from that tree. Who you? Who me? Who dares to be somebody? So let's slip into the apartment and teeth what's there. With a problemo, even when we turn our backs for 10 minutes, let us pirate and underprivilege this archive. Let us bite him down to nothing, knowing fully well that there will be no response of outcry, no remedy from the rest of the society, community, because them racist too. Racism says that people like me have no complaint, have no right to make complaints. And if, when you do, there is no redress, unless, of course, you attempt violence, which they see in you anyway, even in their dreams. Racism is when you should be back home with your own people, with them own crypto-racist problems. By the time Kamau left his Washington Square apartment to return to Barbados, his health had been done by the experience, so vertigo, insomnia, and exhaustion were never far away. Most distressing of all is that despite emails giving lists of the items stolen and the circumstances under which they went missing, few of his friends and colleagues seemed willing to admit that they had been stolen. Excuses were made that he had somehow mislaid them, or Kamau had fallen into some kind of early dementia. Similarly, we seem to have lost our ability for empathy in a world of tweeting, text messaging, and Facebook. Due to his poor health, Kamau is unable to attend the many celebrations in his honor, including this one. This has at times offended the organizers, whose focus is more on the event than the man who is being honored. Despite this, he continues to compose works where the visual has become more and more important. Although the early Mac computer, which he used for his secret style, has been destroyed, and locating another one through eBay has not proved successful, he uses fonts and actual photographs as part of his work. There's an even greater intimacy about these works as his world has grown smaller. For his 80th birthday in 2010, an exhibition entitled Tribute to Kamau and inspired by his work was mounted at the Queen's Park Gallery. 20 Barbadian artists created wonderfully innovative works showing how his poetry had impacted on them and continued to inspire them. In our presence today is one of those artists, and I would like him to stand. Rashid Boudou created wonderful work inspired by Kamau's first time of salt, when he was, his life was, someone attempted to murder him. His first wife died. There were break-ins into the apartment where he was living. There was Hurricane Gilbert, and all of his archive, most of his archive, was soaked in mud and some completely destroyed. Rasakem Ramsey, who was in that exhibition, described how hearing actor Milton McCollin perform folkways at a black night session at the Fishnet restaurant, while he, Akem, was on his way home from Sunday school. This is what Akem said: that single encounter has become an indelible memory and continues to define my cultural aesthetic posture as well as fuel my creative process. Many other artists and poets continue to be inspired by Kamau's work. As recently as this year, Kamau responded in words to a performance video collaboration between artists Nick and Alberto Whipple. On Friday, I phoned 6 local bookstores to find out what books of Kamau's work were in stock. Only 2 had any books by him, and the number of copies was small. The work of writer cannot live on for generations in their own country if it is not available to be read. In Europe, there are translations being made of rites of passage into Italian, to be followed by other works by scholar Andrea Gazzoni. Sika Fakambi has made a French translation of his poems in an online magazine called Retours, including Negus and Kumina. As the recipient of the Frank Cullimore Literary Award twice, the Casa de las Americas 4 times, the Griffin Prize for Poetry, the Newt Stad Award, and the Bussa Award, and others, he must surely be named as our first poet laureate, and we look forward to him being awarded a Nobel Prize. More than any of this, he needs our support through emails and phone calls. Words and poets need love too. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.